To mark 1 month until the English exam, I sent out a story on my Instagram asking you guys if you had any questions that I could answer. And so a lot of you sent in questions relating to the English exam with one English language question. And so I'll be answering those questions in this video. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Darren, a first year medical student studying at Monash University here in Melbourne, Australia. The English exams, the Englang and English exams, are both within a month. So I understand if you're a little bit nervous, so hopefully some of these videos will be able to help you out. If you're new to the channel, I'm pretty surprised because it's pretty late in the year for you to discover this vault of VCE content, but better late than never. Now, if you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments below and I will be very happy to make another Q&A video. It's pretty close to exams, so I don't really have time to make a video on every single aspect that I want to cover. So I think it's really good that I can tackle exactly what some of you are worried about. So please leave questions you have in the comments below. Anyway, let's dive straight into the English questions which I have for today. The first question we have is from Will and it's about memorizing quotes. So I have made a video on this, so please check that out. But with memorizing quotes, it's really important that you have context for memorizing them. The best way to do this is to integrate them in past essays that you have done, or if you're writing new essays now. And so I explored in that video about how with a body paragraph, you have certain points you need to prove. You need to set the scene a little bit with what challenges the characters might be going through and how they get through those challenges. And you need quotes to supplement each of those stages. And so as you keep needing to go through that journey in future essays, you sort of repetitively learn those quotes because you need them to prove those same points. Another way, as it's getting quite close to the exam, if you want to learn new quotes, I suggest a really good way is to just make a sentence with them. So put them into a sentence that you think comes under a theme, or under some kind of body paragraph you've done before, or might fit in well with a contention you have for this particular text. But just making sentences with them is a very good way of remembering them rather than just reciting them. And also, once you've constructed sentences with them, maybe a few days later, try constructing a paragraph on that theme. So this sentence, this quote about how the women were given as allocations, so the quote allocations. A couple of days later, you might do a paragraph on autonomy. And so along with all your other quotes about autonomy, you try and implement that allocations one in as well. And I think that's a very efficient method of memorizing quotes. The second question is from I90 and it says, "Hey Darren, how do I write a good comparative essay? I hope UChicago is teaching you well in terms of how to write essays, but with a good comparative essay, I do break down my own essay, so that's a good guide to follow. In general, you want to have very clear language and very clear ideas in each body paragraph. You don't want it to become muddled or messy or make the examiner scratch their head. You want to spell everything out as clear as you can and support your claims with evidence. And particularly with comparative, you want to have lots of comparison, whether that's throughout your whole body paragraph or for the second half of your body paragraph or however your structure is. You want to compare the texts actively and have very lengthened comparisons. So just as Maloof suggests this, so too does Frears illustrate this idea, rather than just saying similarly or also. The third question is from Simona and it says, "Are practice essays the best way to revise for the exam?" Practice essays are very important. I wouldn't say there's a best way for the exam. They all work on different aspects. I think practice essays are really good for testing out how well you know the text, so whether there are moments that you've forgotten as the year's gone along, and also really good for timing. So I advise you to do practice essays under strict exam timing without notes and with as much reading time as you would use in the actual exam. Now, apart from that, I think planning is also very important because that's where you cover all your bases and make sure that there are no themes, no topics that you wouldn't be able to write on. And it's important in that regard, and practice essays don't really prep you for that. And also just reading the text, I think just once through, is just a good idea to get a whole broad view of the text and see if there's anything you missed. And that's something that practice essays don't offer you because they're very narrow on specific topics. So all these practice methods have different purposes, and I would value them all and try and incorporate all of them into my preparation. The next question is from Fluffy, who asks, how exactly do you learn new vocabulary to use in essays? So I didn't intentionally sit there and just go to like top 100 best words for VCE students. What I did was, as I wrote practice essays, I realized often I would be lacking in terms of vocab. I wouldn't have the words that I wanted to use, or I was repeating myself a lot. So maybe the essay was about destruction, I kept using destruction, and then I learned words like annihilation or undermining. And so as I prep for those essays, I would search for synonyms just so I wouldn't sound boring. Another way I learn new vocab is through my teacher. As she talked to us about the text, as she discussed our work with us, she would often use really good words, and I'll try and incorporate that into my writing. So definitely, if you want to just purposefully look for vocab, I definitely advise you to think about the themes of your text and look for words that you might use or words that are associated with those themes. That way you'll find words that are actually useful rather than ones that you might never use. The next couple questions are pretty similar, and I'll group them together. So the first question is from Simona. Which section did you do first, second, third on the exam? Gupta asks, how much time do you relatively spend on each section? And Simona asks, how long do you suggest we write for each section? So the order I set the sections in, firstly, it was argument analysis, secondly was text response, thirdly for comparative. And the time I spent was 50 minutes on argument analysis first, because I just wanted to get that done quickly, and it also flows on well from reading time. Also, it takes the most brain power. You have to think the whole time, so I like getting that done first. Secondly, I would do text response. I'd spend an hour on that. I just try and get that done quickly and solidly. I was really confident in my text response because I knew the whole text, and it wasn't that long of a text, and so I just try and grab my marks there and just move on. Comparative, I spent an hour and 10 on it. That was the amount of time I had left, and I would allocate a little bit more time for that component, because unless you've done the exact topic before, it requires a little bit of thinking to shift your moments and shift your comparative sentences to actually fit the topic. And usually I would have a little bit of time left, and in that case I'd sort of look over for any grammatical mistakes in my exam. The following question is from Jeremy, who asks, pen recommendation. I personally prefer a Muji 0.5. Jeremy has been a long-time supporter of the channel, so thank you very much, Jeremy. Muji pens are really good, I appreciate that. The pen I used for all my written exams, apart from maths, because I used pencil for that, was this pen here, this exact pen. I bought like a pack of it and they sent it in. It's called Sarasa Dry Zebra pen, I think that's what it's called, 0.5. I found this in this little shop in Camberwell, which like later closed, and so I had to buy these pens online. But this pen's really nice because it writes really well and it's quick drying, so I didn't have to worry about smudging. I think with Muji pens I worried about smudging a little bit, and also because some of them don't have grip on the sides. So I liked using this pen, and I used it for all my written exams except for maths. The next question asks, how do you improve your exam marks once you've hit a plateau? Now, if you hit a plateau that you're happy with and it's like in the high end of the marks, then there's nothing really to be concerned about. Just really keep up what you're doing. But if it's something you're not satisfied with, then I really encourage you to communicate with your teacher as to where you can improve. You might have to change up a lot of things. Maybe your teacher thinks the moments you've continually used aren't that good, but just really figure out what that is. And also you can have high scoring people look at your essays as well. I'm offering marking services, so feel free to send me your essays and I'll be happy to mark them as well. But yeah, most importantly, figure out why you're not doing as well as you want to. It may be a different thing with each essay, which is a little annoying, but it also means you cover a lot of your bases if you fix up all those mistakes. The final question is a sneaky English language question from Derek. I hope school's going well with you, Derek. And he asks best short answer question tips. Now, my tips are a little different for the SAC than for the exam. With the exam, my tactic with short answer was just do it as quickly and as confidently as I can. I think short answer, first of all, you need to know the meta language very well, because you don't get a choice in what you talk about. And yeah, so you've got to make sure your knowledge of every single word on the study design is solid, which wasn't the case for me, but I ended up doing all right. And secondly, I would advise you to try and hit the marks. Right, if something's like 4 marks, then all you need is an example, analyze example. Second example, analyze the second example. And I call that EE, so example, explanation, and you just repeat that a lot of times depending on the question. And so I recommend just doing that. Like, don't try and write too much or try and fill up the space. 2 marks just means you hit them with that example, you analyze it well, and then you move on. I think short answer, you just try and not lose marks. You try not to misunderstand the question, try not to use incorrect meta language, and just do as best as you can. But you want the bulk of your time and your effort to be devoted to the other two sections, because they are where you really grab marks. And if you look at the examiner's report, you see that people who get 14 on the AC and on the essay is usually like 1%. So with the short answer during the exam, do it. Make sure your answer's like not complete BS. Like you have confidence that it is right, and you'll grab at least some marks, and then just move on to the next one. The final question is from Vat Salvid, who asks, "Hi Darren, could you go through how you wrote comprehensive essays within the time constraints of the English exam?" So I think there are two main methods that can help you with this. The first one is having really strict timing. So I don't mean just between sections, apart from the 50-minute, hour 10 benchmarks. I also actually broke down my paragraphs. So for text response, I knew I had an hour for it. I knew I would always write one intro, 3 body paragraphs, 1 conclusion. So I allocated 10 minutes for the intro plus any planning time that I needed, 15 minutes for each body paragraph, and 5 minutes for the conclusion. It was a similar time for comparative, except with a little bit more time to spare. And with argument analysis, I think it was around 10 minutes for the intro, 5 minutes for the conclusion, and then so that left 35 minutes. And sometimes I would write 5 paragraphs, sometimes I would write 6 paragraphs, so I would divide 35 by however many paragraphs I decided to write on that day. And I'd really follow these rigorous timings, because that's how you keep up with the exam. It's really hard to have a vague goal of an hour. It's quite a long time to pace yourself, whereas if you know where you need to be at for each paragraph, and even within those paragraphs, it's much easier. Now the second method that really helps is just practice. So I did a lot of timed practice. It was sometimes 2 sections together, sometimes just 1 section by itself, and I only did 2 3-hour exams. So just doing practice exams in time without any notes will help you gauge how much you need to write. I also recommend using VCAR's actual paper printed out, because you sort of know how much you write each time, and you will know it's the same in the exam. And so sticking to those timings and constantly having your watch there and not some other kind of timer, and looking at your watch for timing will really help you prepare for writing within those time constraints. Thank you guys for tuning into today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks to the guys who sent your questions in. Hopefully it's cleared up your queries and the queries of people who are watching as well. Once again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I understand this might be where the nerves are kicking in for you guys. Your holidays are almost over. You might have SACs coming up, but you definitely have exams coming up. Just focus on each thing as it comes. Focus on each day, trying to get a bit of work done each time. I understand around this time, a lot of people are feeling like they have a lot to improve on and they're not where they want to yet. But the way you get there is just by focusing on one subject and one aspect of that subject each day, rather than trying to improve everything at once. So don't get overstressed, and feel free to contact me or help each other out in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you all next time.